The Independent concludes that Jenrick has resigned not because he's in a fit of pique over Rishi Sunak, but because he realizes no matter how hard he pushed to get the ECHR knocked out of the way, there are 109 MPs from the One Nation group who would never accept it in the House of Commons, and then that law would have to get through the House of Lords as well. And that wouldn't happen. So the Independent concludes that Jenrick has simply thrown in the towel. He's given up because he knows this is impossible. And he's doing so in such a way that it looks like Rishi Sunak's responsibility. The real problem is the idea that Sunak has put across in Prime Minister's questions, that Cleverly has put across in the chamber of the House of Commons as well, that of course Jenrick has put across, that in order to work, a migration plan needs a deterrent, and Rwanda is that deterrent, a plausible diversion if you're in the business of magic. And the point is, a deterrent is not necessary to get a law through and to be seen to be determined to follow through a plan. The idea of a deterrent is something that has run through our history until we abolished the death penalty. A deterrent is not necessary to deter criminals. A deterrent is simply a bit of theatre. And that is all the Rwanda scheme is. And if you look at the Rwanda scheme in more detail, Rwanda gets to decide who gets sent to the UK in return for what it's doing. And there's no indication in the treaty about how many people get sent to the UK. Rwanda gets to decide how many migrants it accepts from the UK. The number seems to have gone down from many thousands to 100. And if they misbehave in any way, they get sent back, not to France, but to Britain. So in other words, Rwanda implicitly acknowledges that these migrants that we have sent away from the UK belong in Britain. Effectively, Rwanda is giving them asylum. It's an interesting position, and it's one that I'm sure Robert Jenrick has noticed, and he realizes, there's a flaw in the system, but that flaw was there from the very beginning. The plan is absurd. The plan was absurd under Suella Braverman. The plan is absurd under Robert Jenrick. You'd think, at this moment now, you'd think, oh yeah, he doesn't really like the Rwanda option because he's soft on migration. Well, I think the Rwanda plan is not the way to deal with migration. I don't think I am soft on migration. I think there are many people who should not be coming across the channel. We should be deterring everybody. Well, we should not be encouraging anybody to come across the channel, which means we need safe and legal routes, which means actually we need to be processing applications at source or on the journey. We certainly shouldn't be processing them in the UK, partly because the Home Office has demonstrated very effectively that it's incapable of processing this large number of applications centrally. So how do we deter people from coming to the UK? We make sure their applications are processed outside the UK. In fact, we can make it quite clear that applications are unlikely to be processed in the UK. Well, that's a reality at the moment anyway, isn't it? People who want to come to the UK, who want asylum in the UK, should have their applications started elsewhere before they try and come. The Rwanda scheme is demonstrably batty. I'm using a more careful expression than James Cleverly's alternative. And as for the fallout from this spat, I don't quite see how Rishi Sunak can pull this together. He could call a general election. That noise is being made at the moment quite loudly. But his obsession, the way he has pinned his colours to Suella Braverman's flagpole, his obsession with protecting the borders and stopping the small boats, has failed. So any snap election he calls is ultimately hold in the bowels immediately, and he is effectively conceding a Labour victory, because the plank on which he is pinning his election hopes has been ripped up by himself. And as if to sort of define this even more, he's just put out a tweet. He put out a tweet about 5 hours ago saying, "We can no longer tolerate endless illegal migration. It costs us billions of pounds and costs innocent lives." I agree. "That is why we are taking action to put a stop to it." What action? What action? Because all of this is simply words. And this is really the problem with the small boats issue, with the Rwanda solution. It's just words, 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 as Hamlet said. Instead of doing this, Rishi Sunak, the moment he came into power, should have convened an international conference. And then there could have been as many words, words, words as he wanted. And he could have stood back and been prime ministerial. Instead, he's got his hands so dirty, so soiled by the grime of Suella Braverman's obsession, dream. He's got into her dreams. Why make her dreams his? What's the point of having a minister to do the dirty work if he gets his hands so soiled? If he's soiled up to his elbows in this rubbish. And is there anyone else who could lead the party into an election? No. No. Oliver Dowden. That's laughable. That's laughable. He couldn't even do the job of culture, digital culture, media and sports secretary. It's madness, utter, utter madness that he should be prime minister in principle. No. And I can't see there's anybody else in the wings waiting to do the job. If the Conservative Party wishes to have a snap leadership election and follow that by a general election, we'll be at the polling stations by February. If Rishi tries to call a snap election, we'll be in the polling stations at the beginning of January. If he manages to snuggle through this nonsense, he's got no agenda. He's got nothing to show. It's just a matter of hanging on. And it depends how many people put in letters of lack of confidence, how many people put in their letters to the 1922 committee, and how many ministers resign in the next few days. I think that's decisive.